So we're obviously going to talk about puppet animation the Powerhouse way. So thought I'd start out with kind of just the whys of using puppet animation up there at the top. The main reason is budget, deadlines sometimes dictate it. You can get a lot of mileage out of talking characters, dialogue. Speed, you can do a lot of scenes fast that way. It keeps characters on model. You don't have to worry about redrawing the head each time, using the same head. You can use the mouth and eye shapes for acting and dialogue. Our mouth shapes, eye shapes, all are contained. And so no matter where you animate the character, you can always have them blink or talk or make expressions. So, and then you can reuse it easily. So there's a lot of our jobs. I know the Jasper job, we wouldn't have been able to do it in this amount of time if we had to draw all the dialogue scenes and things like that. So we're not just using it just because it's easier. It helps us get jobs. It helps us complete jobs in a good amount of time. So, and a great example of it is the Flintstones. They obviously didn't use flash symbols or puppets like we do, but the same general idea was being employed. They would draw different angles of the head and have mouths and eyes for each one of those so that the character could talk up and down. This book I can pass around, and it kind of shows that. They had it on cells, obviously. They would place different body parts on the cells, but that's kind of the same general thing we're going for here. So the general thing is don't think of it as real animation versus puppet. Like if you're not drawing and you're not really doing animation, you need to have the principles of 2D animation and just bring them into puppet animation so that you're using this. If you're sitting down drawing it, you're using those same type of skills and techniques. You're just applying it, and of course it's in a more limited way, but you're trying to do the same thing. You're still trying to make the character act or move, or you're still trying to get them to express what they're talking about or what they're reacting to. So try not to think of it as if you're just doing a puppet scene, then you're not really getting to animate. You are animating. It's just in a different way, in a limited way. But and as you'll see later, there's a lot of times where you mix the two. You're using puppets, but you're also drawing the arms or drawing the body. You may have a run cycle, and you're using his head as a puppet. So it's staying on model, but you may be drawing the body. So it's kind of a combination. There's a lot of scenes that are just puppets, but then there's many that are kind of a combination of those things. So. And before you start a scene, these are good things to go through. The first 2 or 3 are good no matter what you're doing. If you're animating traditionally or drawing on paper or whatever, but check your hookups. Look at the scene before and after, kind of get a feel of what happened before, what's happening later, so that you're not duplicating anybody's actions, and that your character is kind of starting and ending in a good pose that fits with the rest of the scene before and after. You want to listen to your audio several times so you kind of get an idea of how they might deliver the line or whatever the action is, and act it out yourself. How would you say that if you're kind of exaggerating your movements? How would you say that? Can give you a good idea of how your character might do it. And then who's your character? If he's Roger Rabbit or is he Eeyore? They're going to deliver lines differently. How they express what they're saying. They may say the same thing, but they're going to say it. Movements are going to be different. So think about who your character is and what they. You might check out other scenes in the show to see how that character's been handled before. You want to keep it in character with who that character is. So, and then flash related, I think it's a great idea to. I try to do this anytime I make a symbol, anytime at all, is immediately set it on single frame, unless you know you're going to need it to loop. because as you'll see, we'll get layers of body parts, and if they're all in loop, and you start keyframing later on, you know, when we add all the mouths, his mouth is going to be going on loop, and you're going to have to fix that later. So I just kind of mentally think, I'm always setting a symbol to a single frame right when I make it. And you can kind of set it to the most common instance. You know, if you've got a character that's happy and he's saying something, you might set it to a happy mouth. We'll see that later. But make sure all your symbols are on separate layers. If you have multiple symbols on the same layer and then you try to tween that, or try to make a motion tween of that, it's going to make what's called a tween in the library. And so, which we don't want, because those things replace each other. We have one instance where someone's eye became like a wagon wheel because it was called tween one, and so was the wagon wheel from somebody else's scene that was called tween one. When that got put into the main scene, someone's eye became like a wheel. It was like moving everywhere where it should have been, but it was the wrong thing. So try to, like, maybe when you do your scene, just check out the library, make sure you don't have any tweens in there. It'll just list them as tween one, tween two. Just rename them if you accidentally make those. Label all your layers, and if you can, put all the layers into a folder, especially if there's multiple characters. That just helps kind of keep everything together, all the character parts in one folder. Okay, so beginning to animate your scene. For a lot of this stuff, this is kind of the one we're going to use as our example.
Okay, what you like a filthy moron?
So that's not Ben, but it was more fun than what Ben's usually saying. So
Okay, what you like a filthy moron?
Like for this type of scene, it might be different for like a ringtails or something, but I just took this as kind of an example. If you're doing a dialogue scene, think about it that you're going to put the end product on twos for the most part. I mean, you can use other timings, but for the most part, your general timing is going to be on twos for the kind of projects like Jasper is. So think about that as you're starting it. The reason we want to do that is because if we need the character to talk or blink, you can't just have all those tweens in there and then try to, it's going to be easier to do it if everything's without a tween on twos primarily. Again, that can change, but you don't want to put everything on ones. It doesn't need to be on ones. So. You want to think of this stuff as pose-to-pose animation, so that you're getting a character in a good pose, letting them speak or react, and then moving them to another pose, as opposed to just trying to make your character move all around for no really good reason. You kind of want to hit a good pose, let him say some stuff, move to another pose, or react in some way. So that's how you can kind of generally think about this stuff. So to do a pose test, you kind of want to get your major key poses down. Like if this character's saying what he's saying.
Okay, is what you like a filthy moron?
You know, we got layers and layers of Ben's hair, his nape, his eyes, pupil. The pupils need to be on separate levels too, because they need to move. They might need to move independently of each other. So, just as a FYI, but he's got all his parts here. And for my pose test, this is what you would run by your supervisor. If you get this scene, and it's just layers, you know, one pose of Ben here. You want to set your major poses to kind of give an indication of what you're going to do in that scene. So literally, you just make keyframes, and you're going to move those things around. Use the onion skin. I might have him anticipate. Want to take more time than I am, but this is kind of the general idea. You're
Okay, what you
showing
like that dopey moron?
what the character is going to be generally doing. You should be able to.
Okay, is what you like that dopey moron?
You can't get the whole story from this, but you should be able to tell the general story of what the character, how he's going to act, where he's going to move. You want to do that first, so you have that kind of laid out. It doesn't mean that those keyframes can't get moved around or changed, but you're kind of starting with a good basis. You don't want to just start animating his first move, because you kind of want to set the whole scene and do it from large to small. So you're setting up the big key poses now, and then you'll work in between those. You know, if I just tween these things now, I'm going to get product right.
Okay, is what you like that dopey moron?
You know,
Okay, is what you like that dopey moron?
which is
Okay, what you
moving,
like
it's
to do,
animated, but
alright.
this isn't what we're going, right? We can teach someone to do that in 5 minutes. Just
Okay,
hitting
is
the
what you like that dopey moron?
motion tween. So that's just your start of your key poses. So the next you want to work out kind of your breakdown poses. The breakdown poses are the next most important after the keys. And they kind of will determine the timing and the path that your character's taking to the next pose.
Okay, what you
So if I want this guy to, I'm going to have him anticipate down and then come up.
Okay.
There's a couple ways to do this. You could do the keyframe somewhere in between these two poses, and then literally just move them.
Here's what you do. Here's
Or a lot of times I'll do create a tween here,
okay.
and then I'll grab a tween that's close to the. I want him to kind of come up quickly in the scene. How about that? So I'll grab a tween that's favoring where I'm going to, and then slide that backwards. So now my breakdown drawing is this one, which is in space. It's closer to my final drawing, but I moved it ahead in time. So he's getting there faster. He's getting to this pose faster and slowing into that pose.
Would you still want to apply like an ease out on the end of that, or
Okay, is what you like
sort of
it.
take care of that manually?
I think the ease out, what he's talking about is doing in the properties here, you can choose to ease in or out between keyframes. There's an ease.
Okay, is what you like it, dopey moron.
Problem is if you put more keyframes in here, and now it's easing between that keyframe and that keyframe, and not the rest of it. So I like to know where the breakdowns are and move them myself. You can use the ease in and ease outs, but I wouldn't just rely on those, because if you go in and set more keyframes, it changes the way that, you know, it's now just easing to the next set of keyframes, not the wrong one you did. You can see my breakdown doesn't have to necessarily be in between those two key poses. I could go past it and settle back down into a key pose. And like Frank said, if I kept doing that, you might get something
Okay, is what you like it, dopey moron.
like this guy.
Okay, is what you like it, dopey moron. Okay, is what you like it, dopey moron.
And when he comes forward to do the dopey moron part, I made my breakdown lower so that he doesn't have just a straight movement into that next pose.
So you're keeping in mind the arcs that you want to follow.
You will, yeah, because you can see, that's a good point, because you can see this is just like ping-ponging back. You know, it's just bouncing from one keyframe to the other. So So this is only a start, because he just moves down straight, hits that, and then bounces back up. It's still very, very stiff, but it's getting a little bit more like life, a little bit more so than this one. So like I said, don't just leave it at that. You wouldn't just want to make motion twins and call it done. You want to, like Rich said, you want to think about the arcs, how he's moving to each pose. So some of your in-betweens are going to need to follow an arc so that he goes smoothly up into that next pose. Because as you put an ease or ease in or ease out, Flash is just going to move it. Just going to move it very evenly to the next frame. You know, it's just mechanically doing it. So since most of life isn't like that, and especially when we're animating stuff, we're trying to kind of exaggerate a little bit. You don't want to want very few even movements of it. You want him to get ease in and ease out of places. So don't just settle for what Flash gives you in the motion tween. Kind of play with that. Use that as your basis, and use it as your starting point, but don't just stop there. Another good way to kind of take it to a new level is, I've got this, he's anticipating down, pop up here. You see, all his parts are just kind of moving together, right? There's all one unit just kind of moving down, which is kind of not very appealing. So what you can do is get this timing worked out. You can kind of alter the position and animation of different parts. You can
explain what you just did.
Okay. So I want to tilt his head as he's moving down, so he's not just kind of doing this, but he's anticipating he's going to lower his head. So I'm going to grab just his head parts, head and all the eyes and mouths and everything like that. It creates, if I select those, it selects all my symbols, right? And I hit the transform button, and it gives me a register point right in the middle of all my symbols. And now you can take this point, click on that white circle and move it anywhere. And that's going to be your rotation point. So I want to kind of put it where his neck is joining where his head is fixing to his neck, and now I can kind of bend his head, lower his head, tilt his head up.
So how we should do, grab this one symbol and do that, if you leave the origin point, I mean the
Pivot
the
point.
registration for just one symbol, don't throw your tween off.
Oh, if you're doing one symbol at a
Yeah,
time?
you don't want to move the origin point of the
Yeah.
head.
You want to set it up correctly from the beginning.
Yeah, watch.
This is too big.
Yeah. It's a windy day.
But you can do that, and then just as long as you put that origin point back where it was after you've adjusted it, so that it won't screw up the rest of the motion tweak.
If you grab a group of symbols, you can move this and it won't change that point on any of the symbols. They still maintain their original registration point. So if you've got a group, you can move it anywhere. It's not gonna change. But you kind of want to note about where you're putting it. So if I want to rotate this one, I'll kind of put it in the same place. So it's not like it's rocket science, but at least he's kind of, he's not just moving as one single unit, he's kind of dipping his head. And when he, when he comes up,
Here's what
I can do is kind of drag his head so that it's not just kind of mechanically, moving to the next keyframe. Put it at the same point, kind of tilt his head so that you get a little bit of drag in his head.
Here's what you like to do.
That's better done in my example. It's just coming out of the oven.
Here's what you like to do, moron. Here's what you like to do, moron.
So as he anticipates down, his head's tilting, he's kind of dragging as he comes up. And then his body finishes, but his head's still going. So that we don't have all those parts just kind of mechanically all moving to the same place at the same time.
Like a dopey moron. Here's what you like a dopey moron.
So now it's getting to where we can use this.
Here's what you like a dopey moron.
These are very simple and generic.
Here's what you like a
It's
dopey
starting to get a
moron.
little bit, it's still limited, of course. It's limited animation, so it's going to be limited, but
Here's what you like
it's
a
got
dopey
more life,
moron.
way more life than these two at the top. So the way to think about it is think big first. Think your primary poses, then how am I going to get between those poses, and then altering the timing of different body parts, making your breakdowns, moving them around so that you get arcs to follow, and then the last stage is doing like the eyes and lip sync and any other ways to
Here's what you like a dopey moron.
emphasize the action. So now he doesn't have the lip sync.
Here's what you like a dopey moron.
Add in the eyes and I think I'll further drag his head there.
Here's what you like a dopey moron. Here's what you like a dopey moron. Here's what you like a dopey moron.
So you can kind of see the progression of starting out very simply, but then just adding to that, adding the details as you go. I wanted to show some examples of stuff we've done here that's been puppet. That was pretty cool. Shows what you can do with some of this stuff. 'Cause, with these scenes,
Here's
it's
what
very,
you like a dopey
very
moron.
basic and simple, but you kind of enhance these techniques. You can do some pretty cool stuff. One of the best examples was some of the risk stuff.
Excellency, Gary. Namaste, General.
Yeah, war's gotten out of control, Gary. Whole world's a flaming meat pie. I used to hate peace. Now I'm craving it like a lemon parfait.
Oh, I can see you are suffering.
Look, I know we've had our disagreements in the past, but can you you help me, Gary?
You are asking, can I bring peace to this world? The answer is no. What I can bring is the pain.
So, all this stuff was, this is even more advanced, because he's moving the face. All this is puppet stuff, but he's moving the face to kind of give it a head tilt.
Can you help me,
We're
Gary?
in a frontal pose,
You are
which is
asking, can I bring peace to this
pretty
world?
cool.
The answer is no. You're at a hit Pakistan, now in Parfait.
Oh, I
That's
thought,
cool.
I can see you.
You can see him when he was laughing, he was expanding the head, popping it forward a little bit so that it looked like it was,
Looked like this.
yeah, it looked like his head was laughing
Yeah,
forward.
war's got out of there and he put flaming meat pie. I used to hate PC, now I got lemon parfait.
Oh, I thought, I can see you are suffering.
Look. Hey, listen. Simmer. Brother Sir, Bertha CDF.
The computer defense system?
Well, it's never been tested, sir. You want to smell your mother's rump roast again, Sergeant?
More than anything, sir.
Then do as I say.
So, and you can get some, still make these things act. I thought this was a good little piece. It's really simple, but
Let's go backwards. Health council work choices. Your family will feel the toll. I'll bring back those days. Sing your glorious pain.
I really like this.
A lot of that includes what Doug, a lot of that includes what you were talking about earlier, where it goes into a symbol pose, and then there's some animation on the timeline to get him into that pose. Like there's that dry brush effect,
Yeah.
that's all drawn, and then into the symbol poses again.
I'll bring back those days. Sing your glorious pain.
Yeah, you might, we're probably creating some more arms here, but you know, this head is being reused, the body is being reused, all for that, and just making the arms that they need. This part, that's just weird, but this part I think is done well. So, I mean, again, it's puppets limited, but you really got, whoever did this really got a lot of life out of just a head and arms.
See, that's
Using the same thing.
Yes, it's the same head symbol, and the facial features are sliding up on his head a little bit to make it look like he's rotating in space. If I can open 3
Yeah,
copies.
17 of it.
Just slightly off, sing more.
Roar! I'm a dinosaur! Dinosaur versus basketball! Can he make it? Can Dinosaur get the ball in the basket? Roar, roar, roar! Oh no! Good try, Dinosaur. Real good. Wait, what's this? Slam dunk! Dinosaur wins!
And we've applied it to the horses and mules and Jasper. I mean, this is a symbol neck with a head and eyes and ears and hair. There's like 15 levels, but you can still get a usable effect for even animals.
Well,
Here's what you think
it's
of
set.
them all.
You two get dressed.
Yeah, so here's the real Ben. He's nice.
It's set.
I didn't want to
You two get
defame
dressed.
his name, so. So, any questions or comments or fruit to throw? of these set up to, where you can take them and do
Who cares what you like, that dopey moron?
either do a version of your own.
Hey, you, the pet man.
Just do a little,
Aren't you going to open it? After all, it's a special delivery.
so, just different things you could take and you know, it's a very short piece of dialogue that you can kind of try to use these techniques and do those, and I'd be happy to look at them or give you pointers. Or,
I'd like to just kind of add on to what Doug's saying. Like, obviously, seeing him break it down like that was, you know, super helpful. Like seeing it in the timeline. But the big thing, you know, that I was taking away from it too is that, you know, this Jasper project has it has a much more classic feel of animation to it in comparison to how you saw on the wrist stuff, where, you know, you could actually skew your symbol, you know, side to side. And some of these things, when they're more cartoony, you can get away with the, and those of you that worked on ringtails know that, you know, where you can really slide those facial features and get the cartoon aspect of it. So there's different levels of exaggeration that come with it. And I would say on some of the early ones, that some of you guys that have done ringtails tests, and even some of you guys now that are, you know, can fly through these, the biggest jump to me that I would see in puppet animation is when you learn that secret of taking a tween that Flash does for you and using it for your advantage, how he would stretch it across and find that breakdown and use it as like the anticipation or the breakdown pose. A lot of the earlier, some of these early tests we're seeing, you know, you're getting the concept of how to key these guys out, you know, and keep them all in the layers, the structure that needs to be. But the key is not to make it look robotic and even. There's so many real even poses, you know, and they kind of have this floaty thing going on. You know, you can see the way Doug moved those frames, and the timing on that timeline is so crucial to keeping life to the character and not making them robotic and move. And, you know, if the arm is going up like that on a tween, that you put it on that arc, actually go in there and put that breakdown on the arc. There's little bitty things like that. It just, you see people's work switch like that. You know, when you make the Flash work for you and not let Flash work for you. You know, so like you are, you know, you don't rely on Flash working for you. You actually take the tweens and you make those work for your animation.
well said. Well, thanks for coming.
Yeah. Yay.
Thanks, Doug.